the Golden Stallion, the Man of Tomorrow, Savzu, the Rated R Radio Star, here for another Wednesday Q&A. Of course, the date is, well, it's not of course. Well, how would you know unless, well, whatever. The date is May 24th, 2017. Oh boy, almost done with the month of May. And if I had like a birthday week. It was amazing from like May, even before May 12th. I don't know how long it went. It seemed to go on for quite some time, which was really great. But anyway, thank you again all for the birthday wishes. They've continued to come in and really honored by that. Welcome to all the new patrons. Got some new patrons in this week already. And I got to tell you, I'm going to be doing I still owe the patrons 2 hangouts this week. Keep your eyes peeled, for either however you get Patreon announcements. If you go to the website, if you have the app, if you just get them via email, keep your eyes out for when that's going to happen, because we're going to do 2 probably within the next week. So they're going to happen fast, bang, bang, bang. I'm about 100% confident one of them is going to be this Sunday. So keep that in mind. But anyway, and of course, those are always available after the fact. All the Hangout Q&As, those are live, but they're available after the fact in the audio version on the Patreon feed. So, all right, we've got a few questions to get into, but before I actually get into the questions, I guess I want to start off with some corrections, because last week had a fairly popular Q&A episode, which had a lot to do with blockchain technology. I got a few more questions I got a question about Zcash and some others that I'm probably going to hold off on for at least to not make this like the Bitcoin show every week or the blockchain show every week. But regardless, just a couple corrections to make. Mysterium and Poloneix on both of those subjects. One is that I made the claim with Mysterium, which is this supposed VP, like decentralized VPN. Now, the claim that I made was that on the website, or more particularly, I said in the white paper that the terms peer-to-peer were not there. Now, on the FAQ, on the FAQ of the website, the word peer-to-peer does show up at least twice, I think. But the interesting thing is that, and I got a correction actually from a guy that has the honor of kind of correcting me twice now, that being Roger Paxton of Resist the Empire podcast, who is a sponsor of Sovereign Tech, as well as the guy that does the Lava Flow podcast, which I've seen some other patrons on social media. It's interesting that Lava Flow and Sovereign Tech, I mean, really, like it's on a lot of people's lists. It's nice to be in cahoots, not really in cahoots, but you know what I mean. In the tall cotton, shall we say, with the Lava Flow podcast, which is really nice. But regardless, anyway, he let me know that actually it does appear there, and he's right. It does appear in the white paper, I think twice, and it is in the FAQ on their website for Mysterium. The interesting thing though is when it occurs, it appears, I don't want to say with certainty, it appears to say peer-to-peer based, not just peer-to-peer. So I'm still wondering, and a lot of my other critiques of Mysterium, I think still hold up, regardless of, how genuinely peer-to-peer it is. So, but anyway, I do want to, stand corrected, and I appreciate Roger, letting me know, because, I mean, shit, this is not stuff you want to get wrong, when it comes to tech, which is a lot of the times why it takes a while, to really put together. It's a lot of the time I spend putting together a Sovereign Tech episode is making sure that what I'm saying is 100% on. I flub here and there, but anyway, the other one and this is from another patron that let me know, was about Poloneix, because I think I was talking about how to exchange. Now, my number one way that I recommend exchanging altcoins or Bitcoins, altcoins, whatever, whatever direction you're going, is to just use Shapeshift, shapeshift.io. But somebody did ask about Poloneix, and I had recommended Poloneix. Now, I had not experienced some of the issues that were brought to my attention, and I'm glad that they were brought to my attention. I rarely use Poloneix, admittedly. But anyway, what was brought to my attention was, in fact, I'll read it here. This is from a social media post from a fellow patron, just a great guy, actually. I recently heard you say Poloneix was an okay place to acquire cryptocurrencies. Just posting this here so you and hopefully other Sovereign Tech patrons think twice before using that exchange. I've moved to Bittrex myself that I can myself that I can tell you from personal experience that Poloneix is doing a terrible job, intentionally or not. I've had limit orders not go through, been unable to cancel orders, not to mention the entire site going down on several occasions the past few weeks. I assume you had come across this info, but then when I heard you give it the okay on the listener Q&A, I felt compelled to share this. Take it how you will. So, there's a link to an article, and I'll put the link for this article in the appendix of the show notes for this Q&A episode. Because, well, here, I'll read my response just saying, I'll tell you what the article was in a second, but I said, appreciate this. Honestly, it's tough to find a really good exchange anywhere. I think that's why Shapeshift is so popular and largely my first choice. Then the person responded, cool. I feel there's a lot of shit talking in this space and it's hard to know what's legit news and what isn't. All I know is that I've had several experiences of that site not performing the basic tasks it is purported to do. Not to say I haven't legitimately acquired plenty of cryptocurrency there, meaning Poloneix, but it's really gone too far as of late, especially considering people's livelihoods are on the line. So just a fair warning to you and others, always be maximally careful in the world of cryptocurrency. Absolutely. I totally agree with that sentiment. So the point that, or I don't know that it's even theory, I might be fact, that this article from Cointelegraph that it brings up is that there have been interesting moments where both Kraken, not just Poloneix, but also Kraken, have been DDoSed. Okay, they've undergone DDoS attacks, but during that DDoS attack, it appears that there's some kind of advantage being taken of, perhaps even insider trading happening there. So articles in the show notes for you to check out. Certainly, like I said, you want to go with, my first choice is Shapeshift.io and not rockin' Poloneix, because I know there's issues with that. Poloneix was just the only one that, I don't know. I don't keep a whole ton of track of a lot of these exchanges. I really don't. Like I said, honestly, I do use Shapeshift, but even then, I mean, I'm still more of a one-on-one kind of guy. So regardless, there you go. So that's out there, and I appreciate the patron sharing their experience. It's really, really important. And I don't see everything, especially with the cryptocurrency space. I mean, as late. Largely, minus 2 or 3 different cryptos. Like I am, I'm laser focused on those, 2-3 cryptos. So, if you have news about something that you find interesting, especially as far as patron goes, like I talked about last week, I'm not, every little crypto that comes out, every little blockchain technology that comes out, most of them, I'm not going to really talk about them much on Sovereign Tech. I don't want to give them, I don't want to give them any free marketing. I'll do it with the patrons because it's a smaller audience and it's not something that can so easily be shared around to where it looks like I'm endorsing something when I wouldn't. So yeah, I like to keep that here. And if you find out something, well, hey, let me know about it. If you think for some reason I missed it, or if you want something you want my take on, I'm happy to do it here. It's just on the Sovereign Tech Prime episodes, I want to be very, very careful what I talk about. I mean, when I talk about Facebook or Google or whatever, I mean, there's no marketing to be done. Like these things have become verbs or, just like, full integrations of people's lives. It's not like me talking about them gives them any free marketing. It doesn't. They can't get any more marketing than they have. So I just want to, I think it's really important, especially in the tech world, to be like hyper conscious of that, because there's a lot of swarmy people in this fucking industry. In any industry, I suppose, but the tech world is particularly egregious. I can only imagine. In fact, I have some people there that are going to be sending me quote unquote reports from Consensus, which is kind of the premier blockchain event, it seems, these days. And I can't even begin to imagine the amount of scumbags walking around in that place. I mean, I had a couple people, message me saying, hey, you're going to be there. Love to catch up to you and everything. I'm like, fuck no. First off, I'm not going to pay that ticket price, and they're not going to give me the respect because they know I'm going to call bullshit on their products, to even be invited there. But, oh man, there's some good people there too. I know Paige Peterson's there, Zcash and everything. That's great. I know some other people that are there. I'm not saying it's all scumbags. I'm just saying, let's be clear here that a lot of that floor is a lot of, just a bunch of shit fucks. So anyway, that's, and I already, am I afraid of somebody finding out? Am I only talking that tough on, on a Patreon episode? No, I would say that openly, that I think it's a bunch of shit fucks walking around there. So that's fine. That's why I don't get invited. All right. So we got that out of the way. Somebody who, in my opinion, is not a shit fuck, at least to the best of my knowledge. It was yesterday, actually. That would have been May 23rd. Maybe it was actually May 22nd, depending what part of the world he was in, that he died. But Roger Moore died. I want to talk about that for a second. Not necessarily a death that hit me. Like when Carrie Fisher died, that still hit me. In fact, boy, Vanity Fair released a lot of those pictures for The Last Jedi. Some of those, yep, got the feels. I really did, just, oof. Especially a picture of Mark Hamill hugging Carrie Fisher. Geez, what do you do when you see that? But anyway, this isn't a death that like Carrie Fisher hit me, or like Richard Hatch hit me. I might dedicate this week's Sovereign Tech Prime episode to Roger Moore. But this is one that, Roger Moore was certainly, in my mind, a seminal figure, and a figure that was very inspirational. It's like, for a lot of people, I'm sure they've just kind of been, I think a lot of people probably said, wait, he's still alive, So I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on this, but I do just want to, take a moment and say, yeah, especially for Sovereign Tech. Look, Sovereign Tech, at the very least, wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't for Roger Moore. And I mean that dead serious, and totally literally, because the character of Agent Sovereign is so much based off of, like James Bond, right? And for me, and I know most people don't agree with this, but fortunately I saw quite a few people, in fact, some people of some, perhaps a little bit of a higher celebrity status than mine, which mine is very low, like Robert Burnett and some others, saying, no, he was the best Bond, like straight up. And there's some other, I even saw some articles out there online that said, yeah, no, really, you can make the case that he was the best Bond of the bunch. Is he cheesy? Is he, was he over the top and all this stuff? Yeah. But then, everybody's different. People have different tastes. Some of us, that's what we want. Like that's what we liked about him. In fact, I totally agreed with Robert Meyer Burnett's assessment. And I feel the exact same way, which is that, after Captain Kirk, James Bond was the man, like that was the hero. For me, it was exactly the same way growing up. In fact, I remember, I'll talk a little bit more about this, and we've got questions to get into. We got some great ones talking about the Torrents, and some other things. But in fact, we might get into a philosophical one about public property. But anyway, I remember saying, I think this is when GoldenEye was going to come out, and Elizabeth Hurley, if you remember Elizabeth Hurley, not that she's dead or anything, but, she was the femme fatale, the British femme fatale of the 90s, and maybe the aughts when she did, was that Bedeviled or something, or Bedazzled? Maybe it was Bedazzled, where she played Satan. That was fantastic. Anyway, she hosted, and how she never became a Bond girl, I don't know, but that's regardless. I like to chalk her up as one, because she hosted this whole documentary when GoldenEye was coming out, because GoldenEye was going to be such a huge deal, kind of this revitalizing of the James Bond franchise, and and all of this. Like when I was watching it, and I recorded this, this documentary, because it was a great way to learn like so much about, I was just a teenager, but it was a great way to learn about Bond, at the time, and like to really get the history in real quick. And I remember turning to my mother and saying, how excited I was to watch this, because we only had like a couple TVs in the house. Now every room has a TV, right? Or everybody has a smartphone, whatever. But anyway, so I had to kind of, schedule this TV time to record it and blah, blah, blah. And so I remember turning to her and just saying, it's like, oh yeah, I like James Bond more than I like Star Trek. Now she looked at me and she said, and it's one of the moments where I think she actually understood me as a child, or, teenager, of course, at the time, but she said, no, Brian, you don't like anything more than Star Trek. And she was right. In that one sense, in that one case, she was right. But that's how important James Bond was to me, is that I was willing to make such a, ludicrous statement, but it's not that ludicrous, like I said. So, James Bond is a huge deal. And I totally base the character of Agent Sovereign in all of the little Sovereign Universe fictional episodes. I totally base that off of, off of Roger Moore's, particularly Roger Moore's James Bond, who was, cheesy in delivery of the lines, ridiculous, kind of over the top, very punny. And I didn't say funny, I meant punny. All the way. And my favorite, I've said this before. I don't know if I ever said it I said it on social media. I don't know if I ever said it on a Sovereign Tech episode. But my favorite, James Bond movie is actually The Spy Who Loved Me. Awesome movie. If somebody said The Man with the Golden Gun, I totally get it. That is a quintessential Bond film. But I think The Spy Who Loved Me is phenomenal. But really, I think every Roger Moore Bond movie is fantastic. Live and Let Die, Octopussy, even A View to a Kill. Like, I liked A View to a Kill because, in that I felt like Roger Moore, like, proved you could be this older guy, and still be incredibly sexy and still pull off James Bond. And he did. And I know that kind of colored, because I guess maybe not everybody feels the same way I did about it, but I know it colored the perception of Pierce Brosnan after the fact, because when it got to like Die Another Day, they didn't want Pierce Brosnan to stay on. They thought he was getting too old. I disagree with that. Pierce Brosnan, so, okay, now if you're curious, I'll give you a Bond ranking, okay, of my favorite Bonds. We're going to get into tech questions, don't worry. Definitely at the top is Roger Moore. My number 2 is Pierce Brosnan. Before Pierce, my number 2, and granted, yes, I was a teenager, I was young, I really, really liked Timothy Dalton for a bunch of reasons. I liked his role in Flash Gordon as well, but I thought he kind of pulled off like a really, really deadly fucking serious James Bond, more so than Sean Connery could even really do. You might think I'm crazy and you can disagree with me, but that's fine. But I can explain why. I have actual reasons why these people are top dog. But I put Roger Moore right at the top because every kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Stereotype that gets created for spy movies and that gets created for James Bond is based off of Roger Moore's portrayal. Like it just is. And I like the more serious Bond too. Don't confuse me, but all the jokes and everything about the franchise and whatever all come off of that, but it's because, people really identify with it and it sticks with them. So I think imitation is the greatest form of flattery. Well, nobody's been imitated more as Bond than Roger Moore, or at least the attempts. Or the sincerest form of flattery. Right. So I think it goes to show, and just people don't want to admit it, that they don't want to admit they like the happy-go-lucky, over the top, have sex everywhere, kind of James Bond. But anyway, so yeah, Roger Moore, I think, is at the top. Pierce Brosnan is number 2. Let me explain why. Pierce Brosnan, now, a lot of people don't know this. Pierce Brosnan is an Irishman. He has a full-on, Irish accent, the whole thing. That guy is fucking tough as nails. In real life, he is rugged. He is fucking tough. He is down to earth. You wouldn't expect it because you look at him as James Bond, and he's just, like you would expect him to be this uppity, high class kind of guy. Absolutely not. The dude lives in Malibu on a fucking boat. He's not that I care for these kind of conventionalisms, but if we're going to speak conventionally, and you'll pardon me for a moment. Okay. He is a man's man. He is just rugged, tough as nails. He is just this badass Irish guy. And most people don't expect that out of Pierce Brosnan, but that's who he is. He's in many ways, other than the toughness, he's the antithesis of what you see as James Bond. But because of that, he brings a reality to the character that he is just that tough. And I think it unconsciously shows. But then he also has that incredible ability, and maybe it's because of an Irishman, poking jabs at a Brit, playing James Bond, but because he can do that, it just comes off right. Like he can take it to that next level. So I think Pierce Brosnan's fantastic. And he's, I get it. Daniel Craig's great, but I think Pierce Brosnan was totally legit. Just like, maybe more so than even Sean Connery. Now, Sean Connery certainly in his day was a tough guy as well. He was a Scottish truck driver. Certainly, that doesn't make for a weak human being. And that brings across a certain reality to a character like James Bond, who's, doing what he does. But yeah, I think Pierce Brosnan's fantastic. In fact, my my number one film is Spy Who Loved Me. My number two film is The World Is Not Enough. That for me was the perfect mixture of Pierce Brosnan's a little more serious, a little tougher, James Bond, but with kind of the storyline and sort of the bravado and attitude and panache that Roger Moore would deliver. So I love The World Is Not Enough. I'm also a huge fan of Moonraker. You can't talk about Roger Moore without talking about Moonraker. I think that movie's phenomenal. I might even put that like in my number 3. For the 0G sex scene alone, I think that movie was totally worth it. And only Roger Moore could pull that off. So I mean, when I was a kid, yeah, Roger Moore was the Bond in the 80s when I was growing up. So to some degree you could say, well, that's who I grew up with, so that's who I care about, or that's who I'm used to as Bond, and so that's why I put him in number 1. Yeah, but you got to understand, like, seeing Roger Moore do his thing, even for me at a young age. Now, understand, like, I didn't watch these James Bond movies as they came out. I didn't see them until the 90s, and really when I became a teenager was more when I got into into James Bond. Like seeing Roger Moore do what he did on screen, it really, in my opinion, or not in my opinion, to me, I know, looking back and doing self-analysis, like, I can see he really gave me permission. Just his actions said it was okay for me to be into awesome cars, wild gadgetry, beautiful women, have sex, the whole thing. It was like, watching Roger Moore, pull off James Bond was a permission slip for the high life, and that's really something. And so again, all right, I don't want to spend any more time on that, but I just want to say that, like, yeah, there would be no, at least Sovereigntech as it is would not exist if it were not for Roger Moore, because his portrayal of Bond was just so inspirational. I mean, and he, he's done a lot of other great stuff. Like one of my favorite Van Damme movies, The Quest, that he was in that, and he really put that over the top. He was awesome. He was so awesome. So died of cancer at 89. Yeah, I mean, when somebody brings that much like joy to your life, like he still brings a ton of joy to my life. You don't want him to die. Like, you want him to reap the benefits. Like, I want him to live forever as a thank you. Thank you for making my life so enjoyable and for inspiring me in so many wonderful ways that have brought, endless pleasure to my life. And he really has. So anyway, yeah, there you go. I could talk about Bond, okay. I did say that I'd give you a Bond ranking. So I put Roger Moore at the top, Pierce Brosnan number 2. I'd probably give Sean Connery number 3, and then Daniel Craig number 4. If you want to, I'll give Dalton, number 5, and then, John Lazenby, I guess, would be at the bottom. I know there have been other Bonds, like the original Casino Royale and all that shit. I'm well aware. And I still read the books. I mean, like, I read all of the new books that come out of it. I've read John Gardner's stuff. I mean, like, I read everything. I'm a huge James Bond fan. So I like all the different potential facets of the character. There's even, there's been books in the past 5-6 years where it's almost a reboot in, novelization, where, it's like a younger James Bond, and it's kind of a post 9/11 James Bond. I mean, which kind of Daniel Craig is too. But, then there's other books that take place in the, books that have just come out in the past couple of years that take place in the 50s, where Bond originally existed as a literary character, and they're based off of, like, Ian Fleming's notes and all that stuff. I mean, I read those too. So I'm all about, like, the book Solo. That was fantastic. I'm all about it. Don't think that somehow I have just this one depiction of Bond that I like. No, I like them all. I really do. So yeah, so there's my breakdown. I really, Roger Moore and Pierce Brosnan, they're easily sitting at the top. And Pierce Brosnan too. Here's another thing that, for me, that speaks well of Pierce Brosnan and also adds to his particular flavor of the character, is you had the kind of the trilogy of games there were for, like, PlayStation 2, and they had them for PC and everything. There was Agent Under Fire, Nightfire, and what was Money Is Not Enough. It's not The World Is Not Enough. I forget the name of the third game, but it had Jamie Presley in it, I remember. And those games were awesome, especially Nightfire. Nightfire was fucking great. I mean, those games took Pierce Brosnan's delivery, and they actually got him to do the voice acting. And it was cool too, because they would actually bring in real live actresses, and use their likeness, to, be a Bond girl. Like, so Jamie Presley got to be a Bond girl, right? Or, and whoever else they were able to bring in, which I thought was really cool. But, those games even more so, brought back kind of the Roger Moore James Bond where, you have cars that are submarines, kind of like the Lotus Esprit, right? Was it that was in Spy Who Loved Me and whatever. So, that all that stuff's really cool. So Brosnan has that going for him too. He had, in my opinion, he had a great career in James Bond video games, say nothing of GoldenEye. Holy fuck, right? So, but the original stories that existed for the video games are great too. Some of my, that trilogy is, I think it's Everything or Nothing. I think that was the name of the one with Jamie Presley. But, those games stand very, very tall, in my, my video game, history, shall we say. So anyway, okay, let's move on to some other stuff here because we're like 25 minutes in. I don't want to spend, really, as per usual, I don't like to spend over an hour on this, even though somehow it always seems to happen. Let's get to the question. I had a question about, hey, Brian, I don't get a chance to listen to all your Patreon content. There's a lot of it. Rock on. So maybe you already answered this question. So I want to stop right there for a second. I hope like there isn't some kind of expectation that I expect everybody to listen to every episode of the Patreon content because I'm coming out with a lot, in a very short period of time. I already have a massive library, for Patreon episodes. So yeah, it's okay. I don't expect everybody to listen. And if you ask me a question that I already addressed or something, it's fine. It's good to recover ground for one, every once in a while, even if it's every couple, 2-3 months or something. Like that's a good thing to do, especially with the, the rate at say which new hardware comes out. I mean, you gotta, refresh the question, like what's the greatest PC to buy right now? Yeah, I think that has to be recovered every couple months, or every 3 or 4 months or whatever. So don't worry about it. Like that's totally cool. I'm just glad people are patrons. I'm so honored by that. And that you enjoy the content that comes out. But anyway, so all of my favorite, here's the question. All my favorite torrent sites keep ending up getting shut down. Everything that is left that I'm currently aware of is subpar at best. Maybe I'm just not plugged in anymore, but it seems to me torrenting is really taking a hit recently. I have never put the effort into Usenet, but I would consider it if it was worth it. These days, I often have a hard time finding the content I am looking for. If it's not somewhat current, it seems it's even harder. I would love to know what you recommend these days. Thanks in advance. So yeah, no, great question. And this is, again, another one of these things, this shit's got to get covered. We got to, over time, I mean, as things happen, we got to go back over it. So last week, and I talked about this on, I believe on the Sovereign Tech Prime episode, extratorrent.cc got shut down. Now this was after what happened with Kick-Ass Torrents, which is kind of back. This was the premier torrent site. Like this is where the millions and millions would go, to do their thing. And it was a really good site. I mean, it was very, it reminded me very much of the classic Mini Nova, where it had the nice kind of breakdown of what's the most popular at the moment and, and all this in different categories. It was a really, really great site. I'm still not, anyway, 100% certain what happened there. Like, I mean, there was the DDoS attack that was happening the weekend, just a couple days before they fully shut down. Does that have to do with it? I just don't know. I have some attachments in the, in the more getting shit done aspects of the torrent community. Shall I put it that way? And they haven't told me what's going on. Like, usually these people keep me abreast of developments in the torrent community. And I don't exactly know what happened with Extra Torrent. Maybe Torrent Freak has a story up in the past day that I didn't catch, but anyway. So yeah, this is true. Like torrent sites, they're really on the defense right now. Cause they're under attack. And it's pretty crazy. A lot of the shit that's happening. Now Usenet, I used to, even in recent history on Sovereign Tech, I have recommended, okay, well, get on Usenet. Usenet is, largely nobody seems to be watching Usenet. There weren't any cases of people getting prosecuted for downloading, with Usenet. So that's kind of the last bastion in many ways to go to because so many torrent sites are getting shut down. I think so. But unfortunately, in fact, not even long after I remember the last time that I recommended that, there have been cases now where people that were using Usenet were getting prosecuted. So Usenet isn't entirely the safest bet either. Now, obviously right out of the gate, you want to be using VPNs and all this stuff every time. You want to be anonymizing as much as you can. Every time that you are, doing your torrenting business, whatever that happens to be. There are some sites out there that are still pretty good. The Pirate Bay is out there, but I think it's taking on the load from the extratorrent.cc shutdown. So, the Pirate Bay is, it's iffy if it's even going to be up. But it's a site that honestly seems like it's never going to go anywhere. It's just, its resiliency is remarkable and applaudable. Absolutely. But there are others that you can check out. I might put some of these in the show notes, but I'll tell them to you outright. So like I said, extratorrent's gone. My number one site that I go to is actually worldwidetorrents.eu. And this site is the home of NEM43. Now NEM43, NEM43 is kind of the main provider of comic book torrents. Okay. And they, NEM43, I say they, but well, anyway, they pretty much started the site Worldwide Torrents. Now, worldwidetorrents.eu gets, they have porn, they get movies, they get music. They are not, like you said, kind of subpar. Yeah. Other than the comic books, they really are subpar. You're not going to get everything that, that you've ever wanted, on there. So, worldwidetorrents.eu, that's good for getting your hands on comics really, and maybe books, just, regular EPUBs or whatever and PDFs. But that's about it. So now Demonoid is still out there. And right now the URL is demonoid.click. That .click. And that you don't have to register for or anything. You can register, but you don't have to. But that's out there. They're doing a pretty good job of providing everything. They're definitely not at the level of extratorrent.cc or at the level of what, of what Kick-Ass Torrents was appreciating, a couple of years ago. They're just not there, and that's not a knock. It just is. So, those are, a couple of hot spots, like I said, and the Pirate Bay. Kick-Ass Torrents, like I said, is back. It's a little weird now, and that's at katcr.co. So catcr.co. There are some other ones that are worth checking out as well that I'll mention here quickly. There is, RARBG, which is still kind of an active community. And that's just RARBG.to, RARBG.to. Then you have, there's, LeetX. That's a popular one too. 1337x.to. So those are kind of like the main ones that I frequent. There's a new meta search engine that took over for torrents.eu, which is Torrents 2, and that's TORRENTZ, and then the number 2.eu. Torrents2.eu, that's good because it's a meta search engine, meaning that it searches all the other, torrent sites for you. So that's that's one you might find useful. I think it's anytime one of these meta search engines come out now, I always feel like it's just a matter of time before they get shut down. So what I'm telling you, the sites I'm telling you about, they could be shut down like an hour after you hear this or as you're hearing this. It's that possible. So yeah, worldwidetorrents.eu. So here's the thing. Here's in my opinion, for the torrent community, kind of the real solution for a lot of this. The problem comes from, and maybe this is what most people are interested in, I'm not. The real problem comes from, it doesn't even seem like the RIAA is really, the Record Industry Association of America, whatever. It doesn't even seem like they're hard up. Like you don't generally hear many cases of where, like people for downloading music are getting into any kind of trouble. Because really the music industry is trying to, like a vampire suck off of the streaming services. So they're not appreciating the kind of money they were in the past anyway. So they're not, I think with music and album torrents and all that, I don't think it's as serious as it used to be because, the sales already aren't what they are. And like, there's no way to really tell how much are we losing due to pirating as compared to, because of the streaming services as compared to like with, the movie industry. Oh, well, ticket prices are down or something. And that's because people are downloading cam jobs of movies or leaks, early releases or whatever. So it's really, the main problem seems to be with any torrent site isn't that there's torrents there. It's because of these releases that are in theaters. or that are just coming out on home video or something like that. The movie industry is really, where the hammer comes down on these torrent sites. For myself, that doesn't mean a whole lot to me. Like, I mean, anytime, and then I'm just going to say I'm speaking in the hypothetical, theoretical realm of some kind of alternate version of Brian Sovereign that would torrent. I don't give a shit. Like, I really don't care about movies. I don't care, about any of that. And like, even TV shows, most people aren't going after TV shows. I mean, now when TV shows are getting torrented, we've seen the entertainment industry ignore, threats of new episodes coming out and all this. I mean, there was that Netflix situation that went down that was kind of a different thing that had to do with, they had some show where a few of the episodes got released, but Netflix knew in the end, they only got like 4 episodes of this new season of some show. I forget which one it was, that people would have to sign up to, or their thinking is that people would have to sign up to Netflix to be able to see the rest of them, in the future. Of course, that's not true. You could just torrent episodes. I mean, you don't have to have a Netflix account to watch a Netflix show, folks. Anybody that torrents, knows this. But it seems that, a lot of the TV industry knows that this whole pirating thing of TV shows is kind of free advertising. It really appears to me that the main area where there's any trouble is with the movie industry. It's with the MPAA and whoever. They seem to be the people, like I said, that bring down the hammer. So in my opinion, really the thing to do here is make specialist torrent sites. And these already sort of exist, but let's take this a little more seriously. Like I said, worldwidetorrents.eu. Okay. Now, yeah, they have a little bit of everything, but their main bread and butter is, NEM43's comic book releases every Wednesday, right? So, but I think worldwidetorrents.eu will always be small because that's mainly what it does. Now they may have had goals in the past, especially when it first started, to say we're going to be the next, Kick-Ass Torrents or the next extra torrent.cc or whatever. But maybe they've backed off of that idea because they know that actually staying small is what allows you to kind of survive. And if you're sort of a one-trick pony, you can really do well off of that, maybe even once a week, right? That being with the comic books or something. Not to say that they're not going to become more than that. I mean, that's still a possibility. I'm not sharing any kind of inside information. But I think other sites might want to do that. Like maybe LeetX could become just mainly for music or something, because then, they only have to point, if there's just one site that's mainly for movies, say, the whole torrent community doesn't crash when you kind of decentralize, torrenting's sort of decentralized anyway, but when you decentralize, who handles what aspect of entertainment. Again, there's already plenty of sites that already do this sort of thing, right? I think that's really the way to go. It's when you create these giant central hubs that the trouble really starts, which is what extratorrent.cc became, and which Kick-Ass Torrents was, which Mininova was, which, go down the list of all the ones of the past. Again, the Pirate Bay has been able to hold on, but, seemingly just barely. I mean, it's the site is down so often. It's really... I love them, I don't want to misconstrue what I'm saying here, but, it's such a pain. So, is it worth it for what you get from it? Of course. Right. But anyway, yeah, that's what I think, that's it. Maybe just as a person that gets torrents, this is sort of the direction you want to go, where you want to, have a site that handles this aspect of what you want to, get your hands on, what you want to download. And then you have a separate site that does this, like this site does music. This site does comics for you. This site does, I don't know, fan films or fan edits for you, or, whatever the case may be. That's kind of the direction I think that torrenting really needs to take. And it's sort of, like I said, it sort of already is there, but anyway, I gave you a list of some sites that you can take advantage of. I don't think torrenting is ever going to go away. I don't think it's ever going to be in real trouble. Definitely, hammering hard on people, for being in on it. But let's be clear here that it's really only one aspect. It's the movies. That seems to be the only thing people give a shit about, is the movies. And so my point being is that if you want to torrent anything other than movies, I'm not saying be laissez-faire about it. You want to be as cautious as possible at all times, have your VPN on, do all the business. Okay. But I don't think you have so much to sweat about. And I think sites that concentrate away from movies also don't have so much to worry about. So Yeah, you know, I don't exactly know why that is. I mean, the comic book industry, it's not like, I mean, Marvel's owned by Disney. They've got all the money in the world to go after, people for doing that. But I think some of that, well, first off, the hard part is that it's tough when files are only a few meg, like comic books are, or if it's like EPUBs where it's a few kilobytes, it's tough to tell through the metadata and through certain types of traffic what exactly is being downloaded. It's not like with movies where people are downloading into, usually a gig or more, or a multitude of gigs or something. So it's a lot easier to kind of track and to hunt down, as to where I think with other aspects, and this also speaks for the music industry, for like music that you download, it's a lot tougher to see what exactly, or to track, what exactly is being downloaded and all that. But anyway, we don't need to talk about that much anymore. Let's get into something really fucking controversial. Let's get into really controversial. So this is a question that I got the other day. So on social media, I've been doing this thing called Dear Mises Institute. Now, obviously that's in reference to, or maybe it's not obvious, that's in reference to Dear White People, which is a show that I will review in the future. And the Dear Mises Institute series, what I've been doing is, and they're just short posts where I'll go to the Mises Institute's website, Mises.org. There, they got a plug. And I will find just a ridiculous blog or article that they write up on there. And there's plenty to go throughout their history that would be easy, but then whenever I would share it, because I'll make my, my retort, to the post. And then, underneath it, I'll put what my retort, what my post is about. Which post am I responding to from the Mises Institute? Now, the reason that I do this is mainly there's people that I want to piss off online, that I think are just ridiculous, pedantic. And I have fun with it. With these guys that and they're guys, that nobody really should be listening to, but based upon the social signals I see, for some reason people do. Baffles me, but hey, whatever. So I'm not trolling, because I'm not taking an opposite position that I don't believe. I actually believe largely what I'm saying, but I really am fucking with people. So, and in fact, actually, there's a woman who works for the Mises Institute that she knows, she kind of winks at me, and she's even the Mises Institute's PR person, and she's just like, yeah, I get it. And she's totally cool with the fact that I rip on, her employer, often. So anyway, credit to her for, being such a good sport and getting it. So yeah, so I do these Dear Mises Institute posts. And I did one the other day that, where I pretty much said, I was like, look, there's no public property can exist without governments and without communal decree. Public property can just naturally occur. Just like one could argue perhaps that private property would naturally occur. In fact, that was kind of the point, is that this article was sort of claiming everything's private property, but what you want to do with that private property is really up to you. And I'm like, no, you can have just straight public property. There's no need for everything to be private, but just some group says, oh no, this is public. It can, public property is, my point is can just naturally kind of crop up. And I had a person email me saying, whoa, what do you mean? What the hell do you mean by that? How is this even possible? And they didn't really get into an argument with me. They were just asking what do you mean by this? How is it possible that there is, public property? And why is that even, beneficial and things like this? So I was like, okay, well, I'll talk a little bit about this. I'm not going to do a huge breakdown of how exactly this works, but I'll just spend a little time, just give you a brief, synopsis of why exactly I think that that's possible. I'm not saying that it would happen. Say we're in anarchist paradise and no more governments, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying that public property would certainly occur. I'm just saying that within people's concepts of what property is, it could occur. Now, before I go any further, yes, okay, I fully embrace my egoist anarchist roots. And, I take on, as Stirner said, I forever, I do not see your property. I will forever see it as my property, meaning that, oh boy, that's a whole other conversation in itself. And I'm just not going to go that far. Okay. That's for maybe after we talk about this, we could talk about that. Max Stirner, of course, had, made it very clear that you don't want to have a hard dogma on property because that could become its own form of tyranny, which I agree with. And I've said many times on Sovereign Tech over the years. That's not anything new from me. So the reason public property can, kind of occur on its own, it's a classic. And I mean, it comes from a classic book, analogy of how proof from analogy isn't proof. But we can see, I think this is a little more more than an analogy, because it directly relates to exactly what public property would look like in a, shall we say, free market system. So it's not just an analogy, because I'm not like comparing it to something to try and make sense of something that isn't exactly related. This is directly, what could occur. So, and it's from In Defense of Public Space. And here, I'll just read it quick. Quote, "Consider a village near a lake. It is common for the villagers to walk down to the lake to go fishing. In the early days of the community, it's hard to get to the lake because of all the brushes and fallen branches in the way. But over time, the way is cleared and a path forms, not through any centrally coordinated effort, but simply as a result of all the individuals walking that way day after day." Okay, so let me stop here for a second. So let's, set the scene. You've got effectively a fishing hole or a watering hole or whatever, whatever it takes for you to, water alone makes it a resource. Okay, but you have a little lake behind this group of houses. All right. The people to get to this lake, maybe they even surround it. Who the hell knows? Maybe it's like a circle around this lake, right? That happens all the time. But to get to this lake, there's a bunch of brush and everything, and everybody is independently kind of clearing their backyard to get to this lake. Okay, let's read on. "The cleared path is the product of labor, not any individual's labor, but of all of them together. If one villager decided to take advantage of the now created path by setting up a gate and charging tolls, he would be violating the collective property right that the villagers together have earned. Public property can also be the product of gift." All right. So that's breaking down into another one. But let me stop there, and then I'll read the second example from In Defense of Public Space. So do you see how this works? Is that there's no way for one person to claim this was mixed in. What was this? Because property existed in two parts, right? At least the Lockean idea of property, of private property, exists in two parts. You have the incorporation principle and the respect principle. Okay, incorporation principle means that you did work, your labor mixes in with this external thing. Okay, in this case, perhaps the path, that would get to the lake. Okay, which then is the access point to a resource, which could potentially make it part of the resource. And so, you can't claim this through the Lockean concept of private property. Now, if you have some other way of thinking of private property, okay, fine. But, let's talk under what most people consider private property to be, which again is based off of, what was that, Second Treatise of Government or whatever, by John Locke, this incredibly small book, nowhere near the largest thing he ever wrote in his life. And so much is based off of it. Unbelievable. I'm not even going to go there. So it becomes, if you're going to respect, what other people have done, the respect principle. I mean, that's a very basic explanation of the respect principle. And then you have the incorporation principle, which is the mixture of labor, with some external, object. Then, guess what, folks? I mean, this is effectively public because no one person could really lay claim, to get to it. So this is why public property can exist. And there's no communal decree. I mean, it's just, if people are on board, if people, if this is libertarian paradise, okay, or if this is anarchist paradise or something, and people just, naturally or not naturally, but people have come to respect, okay, the concept of private property, of other people's, of products of people's labor, blah, 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 all the check boxes for Rothbard. Okay. Then guess what? You can end up with something that is not communal decree, that does not come from some kind of organization, that is just quite simply an outcropping of a bunch of people going in their backyard. And it becomes a public property and largely a public resource. Okay, now I want to read the second part here, but then I want to break down a little bit more because somebody's going to mention something about malls, I'm sure. So reading here, quote, public property can also be the product of gift. In 19th century England, it was common for roads to be built privately and then donated to the public for free use. This was done not out of altruism, but because the road builders owned land and businesses alongside the site of the new road, and they knew that having a road there would increase the value of their land and attract more customers to their businesses. Now, you could say, well, but this is because it was private property. They developed it, and now they're just kind of letting it go. Really, they still kind of own it. No, it's a gift. It's being given away. They're not going to maintain it anymore. They're not going to spend their money on it anymore. They're just going to have it and let it be. And yeah, one would argue that somewhat spontaneously, perhaps it would get taken care of. Now, usually the critique that comes up for this sort of thing, whenever somebody brings up this idea for how you could have public property in a world that maybe centers itself around the notion of private property, usually you bring up the mall, where the idea is that statistically it's safer to walk around in a mall than it is on a public road or, a road, whatever, who would build the roads, that kind of road. Okay, it's safer to be in a mall than on the streets. And the argument goes is because, well, the mall is private property and you can be a lot more forceful and a lot quicker I don't mean like on a physical trigger. I mean, quicker on the trigger of, say, kicking out malcontents or bad actors or something along these lines. Okay, so there's the proof that you want everything to be privatized, because on private property, it's far, and somebody's going to say, he's making a straw man. Oh, well, then give me your fucking example. Okay. I'm not mad at you. Just, it gets a little annoying when people are when you're bringing up the arguments that people bring up, and then, but everybody just says straw man whenever you happen to maybe, beat out their argument for some reason. But anyway, so, that's sort of the claim that gets made. But understand that you're basing this notion that, well, the mall is, the totally privatized system is preferable, that the mall is preferable to public roads. But here's the thing is that, people are different. Okay. I mean, like, people are very different. Like, you have people that don't want to agree to, perhaps, like, say this lake, like, let's go back to the fishing hole or something, right? Let's say it was privately owned. Say they wanted to make it so that, okay, well, everybody has to wear clothes here, right? This isn't going to be a nudist beach whatsoever. Then, I mean, does everybody like things that way? No, of course they don't. Okay, just like with the mall, not everybody is going to appreciate the laws or the mall's rules, and so they're going to kind of end up somewhere else. And these people that don't appreciate the rules that you have may, somewhat spontaneously, or however it ends up shaping up, they're not going to organize because it's against kind of the very notion of, maybe they're like, kind of hippie types or something like that, which there's nothing wrong with that. Remember Pierce Brosnan that I told you about? Pierce Brosnan will tell you he's a fucking hippie. Okay. I mean, even, these people that make tons of money, the classiest guys, perhaps that you think you'd ever meet, could be full on hippies and just these rugged folk, that maybe want to walk around nude or something. They're going to, just their existence alone is going to create these areas like I'm talking about, kind of these public places that everybody can kind of access, and they just live with the consequences. Is it safer? Maybe not. But then who the fuck says that things have to be safer to be preferable? Right? I mean, what's your definition of safety in the first place? Some people think safety is not seeing some other guy's cock. Other people don't give a shit. Okay. So, like where are the people for the people that don't, or, where are the places for the people that don't give a shit? They're not going to, what those places aren't going to come into existence. Are you fucking kidding me? Then the market system is a failure. The market system's a tyranny. If places where this sort of thing is, where a looser lifestyle, shall we say, can't just like naturally come into existence. It's preposterous. So anyway, now the article that the Mises Institute wrote that I was responding to, was really sort of making the claim that, well, a community could choose to like create like a public resource or something like that. And I appreciate that the Mises Institute, in fact, this article in some ways was pretty good because it was saying that, no, you know what, some people, they might create communism under a libertarian, in a libertarian world. But at least, but the point is that it has to be voluntary and they need to be able to be free to do it. And I was like, well, good. At least you're not being the dicks who are saying, toss the communists out of a fucking helicopter, or at least you're not the one saying, oh, socialism is evil. It's going to wreck this. I mean, at least somebody at the Mises Institute was saying, no, you know what? In a free world, you got to allow people to set this stuff up if they want to do it, as long as they're not hurting anybody else. Good for them for doing, towing that line. And for kind of putting out the olive branch. But my point is that public property can exist within the respect principle and the incorporation principle combined, can exist without a community deciding that this is going to be public property. It can just naturally occur. Or, it can occur by happenstance, not through any thinking, not through any government central planning or some kind of, I don't know, what the fuck are those? Dispute resolution, something, I don't know, not without insurance companies coming up with it, whoever the hell they are, which so many of those, anytime I hear those arguments, I instantly just hear tyranny. Other people, like, I love that. It's like, well, my insurance company will take care of it. How? What? They're just going to give you, I hope it just means they're just going to give you the money back. If they're going to go after somebody who didn't agree to the insurance company, don't you see a problem there? But anyway, sorry, I'm not going down that road. But there you go. So that's a very basic explanation of why I think public property can happen, because the very notion of how property even comes into existence, or how private property arguably comes into existence or comes into acquisition of an individual, that same thing, that same basis of property can happen through the actions of a multitude of people without plan. Without it being planned out. It can just occur. I'm not saying that it will. Maybe it never would, but it's possible. So to say like, oh, no, we don't want any public property, blah, 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 or it won't get taken care of or something like that. Again, it can happen. Just because it won't happen doesn't mean that it can't. So it can feasibly under our concepts of what private property are. But then also, as far as like, that you don't want it, okay, you don't want it, but maybe other people do, and maybe just by their own actions. I mean, that's how the market's supposed to work, right? Is that it's all based on self-interest, and, one person doesn't realize that they're helping create the pencil, right? Who's that? Leonard Reed? So anyway, there you go. There's my point on public property. Take it or leave it. All right. So let's see. What else did I have on the agenda here? Well, I pretty much got to the bulk of it. I'm going to leave you with a review of a couple of things that I recently listened to. I got another question that was this past week on Sovereign Tech on the Prime episode. I reviewed the new Alien movie, Alien Covenant. And I liked it a lot. Of course, you probably heard my review. And some people said, we never really heard you talk about, the Alien franchise in general. Could you give us a review of that? And I was like, yeah, sure. What the hell? But particularly a couple of people asked what I thought of. So Audible has been doing these things for the past couple of years called Audible Originals, where they are taking books and they are adapting them. They're not usually they're not unabridged versions of the book, meaning that it's just a straight read of everything that's in the book is going to be in the audiobook, right? What Audible's doing is they're creating kind of audio theater, and they're adapting, making little changes here and there, adding in sound effects, doing all this other stuff. They're adapting to where it's something that's shorter and that, is more palatable, to the ears. Now, I talked about this, maybe it was a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago. I talked about this with the Star Wars books, that I always listen to the audiobooks of Star Wars books, because now those are unabridged still, but they add in so much music. They have different, what's the word I'm looking for? Different accents for the characters. They try to match the accents of the characters, whether it's a guy or gal, doing the read. As the voice actor, they add in sound effects and all that stuff, but they're still unabridged. Audible Originals are different, to where they are, it's really like kind of changing things a bit up to where they turn it into a full on, something that, again, it's not like you're hearing a book. It's like you're listening to a classic episode of The Shadow, on the radio. Okay. And so they've done 2 for Alien so far. There was Alien Out of the Shadows. And then there was Alien, No, it wasn't Sea of Sorrows. That's the one they didn't do. Oh, River of Pain that they did. These were part of a trilogy that came out in 2014, which was a really well done trilogy. I mean, they're totally worth reading. The first book is by Tim Laban. That's Out of the Shadows. Then there's the second book, which is Sea of Sorrows. That's written by James A. Moore. And then Christopher Golden did River of Pain, did Alien River of Pain. That's the third book. Now, this trilogy exists in between the movie Alien from 79 and then Aliens from, was it 86? And in fact, the first, so spoiler alerts, folks, if you want to listen to these, but I mean, as soon as you read like what they're about, I'm not spoiling anything here for you, but I mean, I might spoil something. So here we go. But the first book, Out of the Shadows, actually is like a new adventure of Ellen Ripley, which is really cool. I mean, it's really fucking cool. And in fact, speaking of they get full on voice actors or full on actors. The voice actor, Laura Lefkow, she plays the part of Ripley in both Out of the Shadows and River of Pain. And she sounds great. Like, she sounds almost like Sigourney Weaver. She sounds so good. She has great delivery. I mean, it's really, really cool and hot if you're into Ellen Ripley, because again, these are taking place between between Alien and Aliens. Now, there's kind of a weird reason why, because in Out of the Shadows, Ripley gets woken up. She gets found by this other, kind of a mining rig of sorts, or not a colony rig, but yeah, more of a mining rig. And she has this whole adventure where she deals with another alien, right? Now how is that possible, since she's waking up for the first time after 57 years or something in the movie Aliens? Well, there's a reason that like her brain. So here's the spoiler. Her brain gets wiped. I won't give you the reason why exactly that happens. It's kind of cheap, but the book's really good. Like, I mean, it's a really, really enjoyable read. I'll talk more about the listen itself in a minute. But it's a good story. I really dug it. I liked it a lot. And then in this trilogy, it's supposed to go to Sea of Sorrows after that, which has more to do with the ship that, and this planet LV-178 that Ripley, or, that the crew that Ripley encounters in the book Out of the Shadows is originally dealing with, blah, blah, blah. And that whole crew. So I don't know why, but they just released River of Pain. Like I said, River of Pain's the third book. Out of the Shadows is the first book. Sea of Sorrows is the second. They skipped the second book. The only reason I can imagine why is there's really no there's not any real forwarding of the story of Ellen Ripley in it. And so maybe they just wanted like Ripley to be there, or they wanted to be more tied, to the movies themselves. I've heard differing answers on whether or not these are considered canon. I don't mind if they are. They don't do anything that interferes. They don't interfere with Alien Covenant. Well, maybe Sea of Sorrows did. Maybe that's why they didn't put it out there. But anyway, Out of the Shadows doesn't interfere with any of the other Alien movies. It does a great job of sitting within the canon. It's a standalone adventure. River of Pain. The book River of Pain is kind of a side story where it's taking place a little bit before and during. It shows you what happens at the beginning of Aliens, right? Where you remember where like Newt's parents, on LV-428, where they they end up calling the planet Acheron, which of course, means River of Pain in Greek. But anyway, on LV-426, you have that colony. It gives you a lot of backstory of what happened with that colony. Like what that colony was like and what happens, leading up to the events of Aliens, where that Marine, crew and Ripley and Burke and whoever, end up at LV-426. It's really good. Like, it's another one where, the story, perfect, like right on. And it's a story that's interesting to hear. And there's room for more. I don't know if there's been, outside of that trilogy, if there's been any like new stories, because River of Pain ends with, let's just say a minor cast of characters that you don't see in the Alien universe that could be going into action, doing their own thing. Maybe that's something that's coming. I don't know, or maybe somehow I missed it. The last release for the Alien, as far as novels go, as far as the written word goes, which is what these, books originally were that became Audible originals. They were, it was that not an omnibus, but it was like a, what's the word I'm looking for? or you have an editor. It was an anthology. There it is. It was an anthology, which I picked up and is actually really good. So that was kind of the latest release for it. But so as far as like the book trilogy, in novel form, I read it years ago and I thought it was great. I loved it then. The Audible originals, I think they do a pretty good job. In fact, maybe River of Pain is even better than Out of the Shadows, even though Out of the Shadows is kind of the better story because you sort of know how River of Pain's going to end. Once you realize that you're on LV-428 and it's the colony there, what's going to happen. So, it might not be as exciting, right? And there's plenty of points where, where Ripley is in it, of course, again, by Laura Lefkow, where, she's just rehashing lines and maybe expanding a little bit on lines that were given in Aliens. So, that doesn't make it any lesser. It's still a very interesting listen. And it gives you some backstory and whatever. And there's no real contradictions there. I mean, you could have them be canon in, at least for now, if you want in your own head canon. But yeah, I really, really dug, both of those. The thing is, so the voice acting was great. In fact, in Out of the Shadows, Rutger Hauer is one of the voice actors who I love. Rutger Hauer. Most people probably remember him for playing Roy Batty in Blade Runner, which is fitting to have him in the Alien universe now. But he's done so many, Hobo with a Shotgun. That's just a modern movie. He's done so much great shit back in the day. I absolutely love Rutger Hauer, including his work on Smallville. Just a top-notch actor, real badass, always a great villain. Even though anyway, I won't. Yeah, so Rutger Hauer's in the first one. Then in the second book, in River of Pain, Alexander Siddig is in it, and he's playing kind of a quasi-villainous character. He plays Dr. Reese, I believe was his name. And Alexander Siddig, of course, is, people remember him for his role in Star Trek Deep Space Nine as Dr. Julian Bashir, one of my favorite characters on Deep Space Nine. And he just does a bang-up job. It's really cool to hear him kind of in this universe. And so I like them. I thought that they were overall pretty good. They weigh in, both of them, each one weighs in at about 4 hours. So you got about 8 hours to listen to, unless you do like I do, where you listen to it 2.3x, and then you have them knocked out in under a couple of hours. The thing is that now I understand they don't have to play by the same rules I do. They're looking to make money off of doing this. So they have to either pay for a license or they have to create their own music and their own sounds and all this different stuff, right? Me, when I do an audio theater production, like when I do Soviet Tech and all this, I'm not hindered by any of that because I'm not making money off of, off of these things. So, I don't really there's no real legal case to bring to bear on me. I fall very much under fair use. And so I get it that they can't, use a lot of great music and a lot of great stuff like I do. But honestly, the acting's not bad. Certainly, Rutger Hauer, Alexander Siddig, and like I said, Laura Lefkow, doing Ripley. They're top notch. But some of the acting, I think, is a little stiff. And some of the way that they present stories and sort of the lack of sound effects. I know I kind of do overkill when I do an audio theater production. You should see my Audacity files. I have so many tracks running because I have so many little sounds going on in the background, but I notice it. When I don't hear those things and what's going on, with these Audible originals, I kind of think there's subpar audio theater. I think better audio theater was done in the 30s and 40s. Granted, it was, a premier form of entertainment at the time, as to where this is not, perhaps, but yeah, little lackluster in production. Some of the acting's great. The stories are fucking awesome. They're great. They're genuinely great stories. But I think the overall production, they could, I'm speaking from my own experience. Maybe the average person is a little more impressed, when they hear it, but just knowing what can be done with an audio production, I found them to be very, very lackluster in that regard. But if you're just wanting to, integrate the stories and enjoy a good story, yeah, I think it's better than, because some of them, I think Out of the Shadows, you can actually get an audiobook format where it's unabridged. I really enjoy the Audible original version because it's shorter, and because, there's a little more life to it than just an unabridged production. I like it. So I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying I know how great they can be, and they're not. Not that the story's bad. Story's phenomenal. Okay, but just the overall production. In fact, speaking of social media posts I made one where I said, look, I I make Audible originals, sound like something done by a second grader, and I do. I don't mean to sound braggadocious. I'm just saying I know the quality of my work. I know how much effort I put into my work. I know how much is there. And I'm not saying that like acting is 100% great, on my productions, but I just know the production level is significantly higher. And so I'm a little disappointed in that with the Audible originals. Now, I'm not knocking Audible because I think Audible's phenomenal. Like, I think Audible is one of these kind of content universes, sort of like Netflix. In fact, it's the only thing that might best Netflix as far as what's there. If Audible now Audible has some of its own podcasts. In fact, I want to wrap this up. I'm an hour and 10 minutes in. If Audible had took podcasts a lot more seriously, they have some of their own podcasts. But a lot of them are very short. They're like 5-10 minutes, and I'm not saying people aren't interested in that. Certainly they are. But if they really went hard on we're going to make, or we're going to at least produce or put out, be the distributor for some really high end podcasts. I think just about any network, no matter the venue, the genre, the type of media, TV, whatever, I think Audible would give anybody a run for their money. I think they'd give Netflix a run for their money. They already cost more than Netflix does, which is interesting in itself. But Audible has just got such a great thing going for itself. It's really remarkable to look at. I love my Audible subscription. It is so precious to me. The amount of, and all the great content that you can get, and these Audible originals, not even just the Audible originals, those don't impress me much, but the kind of special editions that they do of unabridged works, like they did they recently redid The Handmaid's Tale. They did an Audible special edition of that. It's great. It's genuinely great. It is the way to experience that story. Not even the TV show, even though I don't have a problem with the TV show. Margaret Atwood's work, everything's, all of it's a classic. I read The Handmaid's Tale. Might've been 2000. It was so long ago. So anyway, it was really enjoyable, taking it in through the Audible special edition, but they do that for a few other books. They have that X-Files thing coming out, in June. That is really exciting. It was kind of made, it's an Audible original story. It's made for Audible. And they have, they've got, well, it's terrible that the names, Gillian Anderson, right? And they have, why the hell can't I think it was David Duchovny? Jesus. They have both, sorry, Satan. They have both of those, coming on board. So that's going to be really, really cool, to hear that. At the end of the month, and then throughout the following month, I think they redid, or they're at least distributing, redone versions of all of Carl Sagan's books, which I want to get my hands on. In fact, the book Cosmos, the voice actors they got for it, they got LeVar Burton. Just tons of great people. This is really an amazing way to take things in. Audible is such an incredible little content universe. It's not even little, but it's such an incredible content universe. And I love the fact, I think the reason that Audible's really so successful, this isn't an advertisement for Audible. I wouldn't make any money if you did, if you started getting one, but they started off as a science fiction. All they wanted to do was make audiobooks of science fiction classics. And so I think this was made by, what could effectively be termed a bunch of futurists. And that's why it seems so ahead of the game. And I think that's why it ended up, it got bought up by Amazon. That makes you successful too, but it was already a success because these are, really forward thinking people. And I think it shows. It's such a cool, that's one of my most precious accounts, my Audible account, my GOG account, GOG.com. And I guess my Steam account, I've literally, I don't know what, 11, 12, 1300 games. I don't know how many games I have now. But those, those are my major accounts that I would never want to lose access to. But yeah, it's just amazing what you can get with Audible. So anyway, enough of that. Yeah. So the Alien series, boy, I didn't get into more depth of the Alien series. I guess I'll say quickly, this will be another ranking like I did with James Bond earlier. I'll say quickly that as far as my favorite movies, Aliens is, the sequel, the James Cameron one. Aliens is definitely my favorite movie. Alien obviously is number 2. And I don't begrudge anybody for having Alien being their number 1 and Aliens number 2. In fact, that seems to be the universal. I don't know anybody that puts either of those outside of 1 or 2. Alien 3, I think Alien 3 is a shit movie by comparison. It's such a depressing film. I saw it when I was a teenager. I really almost never feel, or like a preteen more, I really never feel the desire to watch it again. I saw Alien Resurrection in theaters. A little bit better of a movie because it was cool to see, Ripley kicking ass. There's some really cool aspects of Alien Resurrection, kind of like the hybrid human xenomorph is just a badass character. So I dig Alien Resurrection. In fact, it's funny. I was watching one of the rare YouTube channels that I ever watch. That's Cinemassacre with, the angry video game nerd. But James, of course, the angry video game nerd, he did kind of a breakdown, and it was amazing to hear. He and I are close to the same age. It was amazing to hear like how similar we felt about it. Like I don't know, that generation just experienced these movies this way. I mean, same thing. He saw Alien 3 on TV and thought it was just a depressing film. Never wanted to watch it again. Alien Resurrection, same thing. He's like, yeah, the action was good. Seeing Sigourney Weaver doing the business was good. And that the human xenomorph hybrid was like this incredible creature. And I agree. Yeah, I mean, we really had like kind of the same assessment. It was really funny to kind of hear that. So I put Alien Resurrection probably at number 4. Alien Covenant, I put Alien Resurrection at number 5. I put Prometheus and Alien Covenant underneath Alien and Aliens as far as, productions within that universe. The comic books, boy, I could talk about those forever. I've been reading the Alien comic books since the 90s. I've been such a big fan of that. I mean, like from the first time they took on Judge Dredd and I found out they even had a comic book, I was like, oh, give me all of them. There's so many great moments with that, and some of the huge crossovers, like back in the day with Top Cow, where they would cross over with Witchblade and the Darkness and all that. I mean, just awesome stuff, and such an awesome universe that is so huge. And really what Dark Horse Comics has been doing lately with the Alien universe, like with Fire and Stone and Prometheus and all that, has been incredible work. There's a lot to like there, and a lot to take in, and I think Fire and Stone might be considered canon. So anyway, I'm a huge fan of the Alien universe. Definitely Aliens is at my top. Alien is number 2. I might have talked about this on the Sovereign Tech Prime episode, but anyway, there you go. There's so much to love because somehow there's so much to say about the Alien universe and about the xenomorph itself. Like, I really think the xenomorph kind of touches on something very primal with humans, with like real people like us, that watch it in action and all that, and kind of how it's been presented and everything. There's a whole lot to say on that, because I think there's an odd attraction to it that kind of gets touched on in the movies themselves, but that's a little something more when it's done right, like it is with Alien and Aliens and maybe some other forms of the media. So anyway, there you go. Yeah, if you want to check them out, River of Pain and Out of the Shadows, Alien River of Pain, Alien Out of the Shadows. I thought that they were both for what they are, the Audible originals. I mean, it's a great way to experience them. I really think the production level could have been significantly higher, and especially if Audible's really stamping their name on it, boy, it should have been, and it could have been, and it wouldn't have been that hard. I mean, what I can do inside of a week, I'm sure these people had more than a week to put this stuff together. I mean, I can't imagine not. So, I mean, because they have actual paychecks to give out, as to where everything I do is volunteer. So. Anyway, well, maybe it's, maybe that's just the art of the passion project. I don't know. Or the byproduct of the passion project is that, it just turns out that good. Whatever. I feel like I'm just tooting my own horn here, and no need to do that unless I'm going to fart. So, I will. Enough of that. I might have some other content coming out this week. Like I said, keep your eye out for the Hangouts, the live Hangouts Q&As. Those are going to be happening in the next few days. We're going to have 2 of them. So, I want to make it good with you because we missed the one in April. We kind of had one, but it wasn't like an official one. So there you go. All new Sovereign Tech coming out this week, of course. In fact, got a doozy. I already got some great stories lined up that I can't wait to talk to you about. I will see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love. And love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.